fund a new line item, believe me, I know where I'm looking at. That being said, we've passed the budget with a deficit of $58,061. Again, $71,250. It was part of the water, Cochise Water Main grant. We received the funds last fiscal year. We're spending them this year. That's just the way it is. So I think it was going to be about a $12,000–13,000 surplus when you figured that in. Due to this discovery of this formula error, and then the formula error on the revenue side, we still had to come up with a few things in order to amend this budget so it finished with a surplus. And in doing that, the $6,000 expense in the building and grounds fund to get the rest of the building on the generator here.
Village Hall.
In Village Hall. The $6,000 for that, and the replacement dump bodies in the public works fund were removed and pushed to next year tentatively. We'll discuss that when we start talking about 2014-15. But adding in fixing both formula errors and removing those things to next year result in a revised budget deficit of $69,325. If you take into account the Cochise Water Main partial funds we received, it will now result in an overall surplus for fiscal year 13 to 14 of $1,925.
And the intent there, as I understand it, is to accommodate a wish for us to at least have a balanced budget by moving the $36,000 expense for the dump truck body replacements to next year. We removed that out of the deficit. We removed $6,000 for hooking up the rest of the village hall and the backup generator. And in doing that and taking into account the $71,250 from the Cochise Water Main from last year, or when we received it, but we're actually spending it this year, we end up still not quite as much in the black as the 12 or 13 we had hoped, but still at least $1,900 in the black, correct? Okay, and that's correcting the formula errors on 2 line items and moving 2 items and pushing them off to next year. And are either of those 2 items, the generator or the dump truck, critical in nature that they should be pushed off?
I think this is it.
I know mistakes happen, and technology is wonderful. Look at the space shuttle, but look at when it doesn't work, it tends to be catastrophic. So we ended up with a $68,000 central dispatch cost that wasn't actually factored in. And thank you for looking beyond that item that was brought to our attention and discovering that there was $15,000 in revenue that hadn't been factored in because of that same formula. So that's not going to happen anymore, right?
Believe me, that will never happen again.
Okay. Let me ask for any questions or comments from the trustees regarding the amendment in this respect to the fiscal 2013-14 budget.
I just want to comment. That's why, in going forward, like with the 2014-2015 budget, it's going to be imperative that we start looking at it tomorrow, and that so things like this doesn't happen. And that because I know these last few months we have been rushed to try to get this budget done and approved, etc. So I think it's really imperative that we start planning the budget for 2014-2015, starting tomorrow, and start looking at it so we protect the good one.
Trustee Henshaw?
2 things. In the memo that we received that kind of outlined, there was a sentence, something to the effect that Treasurer Busa would double check all the formulas. Can I ask if that has been done?
I have looked at, I was made aware of this just recently, and I spent today at the hospital for a personal matter, but the formulas that I have looked at are in order. I have not completed 100% of them, but I can by tomorrow.
Thank you. And then one other comment, if I could, Rich. Unfortunately, I missed the last meeting about the more discussion about the budget, and I know we've kind of approved the appropriation ordinance, which is based on the budget. So say wash or even. And Frank, we talked the other day, and that's his belief, so I think, I'm looking around, I don't see anybody shaking their head, no. So looking at what we have now, we're down about 40,000 more expense than revenue. And so when we talk about a balanced budget, we're down a little bit. If we talk about the stuff we're gonna get to on the next thing on the agenda, the infrastructure, and if we talk about, replacing a water main at several $100,000, now we're really down. So I don't know what we can do to try to get the water budget to be more even, if that is what it should be. And again, I don't know if that's what it should be or not. But, I don't think we are today. We are down, and if you have infrastructure, we're not. So just kind of a comment.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Walsh?
Mr. Mayor, I would agree with your comments about the mistakes. I think all the trustees are not happy about it, but we understand mistakes do happen. However, going forward, I would ask that the treasurer does check each and every formula to ensure that they are correct, and then provide us with an opinion that they are correct, so we have that reassurance. Obviously, I'm not an accountant, he is, and we need someone to accountant to provide us with that assurance. And Steve, I would ask that you do, in fact, double check all these, if you provide all the trustees with a memo, saying you check all the formulas, and that there are no inconsistencies or errors in those formulas. Okay, thank you.
Treasurer, is that, you're agreeable to do that?
Yes.
To any of the trustees want to add a comment that they don't think it's necessary, whatever? I think that should be direction from the board. Appreciate you bringing it up. Everybody's.
Probably a good idea.
Okay.
Everybody makes mistakes, obviously.
Okay.
I agree with Matt. I think it's a good idea, and I have made the mistake that happened, and so I'm just happy it wasn't me making it this time.
Thanks.
Thank you, Treasurer, appreciate that. Okay, let me just entertain any questions or comments about the amendments and the explanation from the audience on this item only at this time. Okay, hearing none, then the chair would entertain a motion to approve the amendment to the 2013-2014 fiscal year budget as presented by Mr. Brink. Motion by trustee Schnapper, is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Walsh. Roll call, please.
Trustee Schnapper.
Yes.
Trustee Walsh.
Yes.
Trustee Henshaw.
No.
Trustee O'Loughlin.
Yes.
Trustee Wittenberg.
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you. Next item is the progress report on street maintenance plan. I listed Chief Alonso, trustees Bailey and Wittenberg. Obviously, trustee Bailey is not here, but I would ask Chief to begin with that.
If my voice comes and goes, excuse me, because for some reason this afternoon, either it's an allergy attack or a cold attack or something, but all of a sudden I'll talk and it'll disappear, but I'm not doing it all right now. If you remember, trustees, about a meeting or two back, a short discussion or short comments were made about it's time that we start looking at some planning for some issues in the community, namely streets, infrastructure, and whatever else that we feel is important and it's time to start addressing. That meeting then led to a meeting with trustee Wittenberg and trustee Bailey, myself, and Superintendent of Public Works, Ed. And after that meeting, then we went out and did a little work. What you have in front of you, I know trustee Wittenberg has already saw it, and I'm sure she'll add some comments if necessary. First off, I'll talk about what appears to be a street inventory. There's a handwritten one accompanied by one that is typed up. Trustee Wittenberg took this handwritten one and put it into an Excel format for us, so we need to work at it later, and then we have that already done. What this written one was prepared by Ed. This is a very, very broad, just beginning conversation And this information is handed just to the board at this time. I think no copies are made for the residents at this time because it is so broad. And if we were to give it out, I think expectation would be all confused and there would be more questions until we tighten it up a little bit. So it's a very broad look. What Ed and our village engineer did is they went out and drove the streets. It's unscientific, but they inventoried, listed all the streets. And this came up in that time that they were doing this about what they felt each street needed, just as a general concession between the two of them. And they kind of put some numbers about where they're at and priority and that type of thing. And they compared it back to, if you remember, those who were here for previous board meetings, but I know the Board of Trustees remember, we talked about this PACER program that we had in 2009 that gives out a lot of information, and then we had some trouble when the computer crashed, and we're trying to get that information out. Trustee Wittenberg found at a meeting that Wisconsin is still using the PACER program, and I believe Ed has been making some headway on contacts out to Wisconsin, to the university, so we may be getting this program back and see if we can get more scientific. But with that being said, they kind of compared what 209 looked like and did some changes on their own for this new street inventory. And they came up with an idea that just for the trustees to look at, and it's probably a close number, add 20% to the figure that was given in 2009 as far as cost to do whatever they said for each street. And mind you, with this now, we also did a inventory. We had the village engineer do an inventory of curbs, mainly in Acacia, because that's where the curbs are. And again, that wasn't unscientific, where our engineer went out, he wrote all the streets by himself, and looked at, measured how many curbs appeared that looked like they needed repair. Again, that's also in your packet here, another broad look at things. And when I say another broad look at things, now we need to go back with the assistance of my Public Works Committee and the engineer and start reviewing this information. You may see, trustees, you may see on this handout that there's a street that's in desperate need of repair. Now, we may come back and look at that street and, oh, well, for some other reasons now, we might not want to do that compared to that street. So that type of thing has to be done. We may even dissect each street individually. One street may show now we should repair it, but now as we look at it closer, maybe some patchwork for that street. Or we'll look at a group of streets, this has to be done, today, or whatever, the high priority ones that need to be done. And at the same time, we'll look at streets, obviously in Acacia, and see if there's a relationship between some streets that need to be repaired and curbs in that area that need to be repaired, or maybe just some curbs in the area, not the street. There's issues, crack filling. All this has to be digested, decided, and we got to come back to the board maybe in a month or 2 months, whatever it takes. And now a more tighter look, still not the final product. It could bring more discussion. Maybe at that time it could go out to the residents to take a look at. But again, we have to go back after that and come up with even a tighter plan where we can get some better figures. These figures now, I think, as you can say, we're probably within 10% of being fairly close.
Very close.
Now, mind you, that's just for the work on the streets. That's not, I think Ed put a little memo that's also in your packet. I don't think I know is explaining there's engineer costs and things that have to be added. But when we get to that point where I think the board of trustees, after your discussions in the next week, come and feel, okay, well, now it's time to really look. We narrow this down, maybe after the third meeting, maybe after the fourth meeting, I don't know. And we have a pretty decent plan where we think we need to go on street repair. Then, of course, we got to start getting our engineer involved, maybe we'll have the PACER program, and that, if I'm saying something out of line or wrong, please, correct me. But then we can start talking cost. The board can start discussing the ways that we're going to pay for it, if we can do it, when we can do it, but at least we'll have something to look at. So those are the first two forms, that and the curves. Now, along with that is another, if few forms in there that talks about infrastructure, which could be related to the streets, but I think before we talk about infrastructure, we'll stop if there's any questions about how we're headed doing the streets. Maybe Amy, you might want it, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, or not add, or am I covering it?
No, I think it's been very accurate. We're at the data collection stage. So that's the stage we're at. I think we all would love to be in the recommendation stage, but I think right now we're spending time collecting data so that we can sit down and start making priorities going forward. So on the street sheet, I'm assuming at some point, like Frank said, we'll all share that with everybody to see it. The PACER ratings are applied, which is a pavement assessment rating and a priority rating. So you'll see that there's a formula to create a street and how bad or good it is on the spreadsheet. So that's really it. So now that we have everything in one spot, now we can start to what I call slice and dice it to see what other priorities we are going to have.
And when we talk other priorities, unless other trustees have any comments about the street.
I have a couple of comments. I know you said you wanted to tighten up, and I think it's great that we've got this, and I think it's a wonderful start. Estimate for how long this information may take to get to the community?
Well, it depends when we come back with, you know, I know it's going to be on vacation for a little bit, but I can still work with the engineer and start putting some things together. I can still work with with the committee. Of course, we would like Ed's input. So I would say it would probably, maybe within 2 more board meetings. I mean, and if we're at our second meeting and we're still discussing it, the trustees don't feel it should be released yet, well, then that would be a decision of the board to start. But hopefully, you know, we can start getting out some information, and that doesn't mean we'll be close to doing anything, because obviously we won't be talking the finance part of it all. We'll probably still go back and get input from residents and that type of thing.
So 2 comments after looking at this. I'd love to see a column for the history when last work was done, if that's possible. And then I don't know how to call it other than the amount of traffic or the weight. I think not every road is even. You know, a road that has more cars may be more important than a road that's at the end of a cul-de-sac.
I think, you know, Ed can probably
Yeah.
do a bit, but we have no main thoroughfares, so that's one good thing. I mean, we have no semi-traffic, you know, other than garbage trucks.
But the PACER program took that into account that we had, and the new software that I'm looking at will also take that into account. So there are several factors that are analyzed scientifically with the formulas, and then you'll have all that data in front of you, hopefully at the next, at least the second board
Right,
meeting.
when you're back, if we get that
But-
new ones.
So that's a column that would be added at some point, or it's there and I
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yeah, the PACER program that we have all the data back. I put it all together back to since the beginning of the village. That computer crashed. My data's in that computer. Otherwise, to go back and do that, it's going to take quite a bit of time because it took quite a bit of time to enter it. But anyways, we can redo that if we can't get the data extracted from the computer. But in the meantime, the new software that I'm looking at, the data that we have here, we'll plug that into the program. We'll get a fresh new look at this with all the information. It's following the PACER software, so this will help us, and it'll also look at some other items like street signs and other things that are out in the roadway. So, but in my professional opinion, this is a good start. It's will help us, and then once we decide to fine-tune the streets that we'd like to fix, then we'll get the engineers involved and we'll decide, well, 2 inches of asphalt or 1.5 inches, what's the best way to spend the money to get the desired product. So, but I think just the 6 roads or 7 roads here, if you just took a ride and looked at these right now, you'll see what we're talking about with mill and overlay, curbs, or reconstruction. So you'll see firsthand if you just drive and look at 6 of these streets, so, but I think we can fine tune it and dial it in and make some really good decisions here.
And we are trying to get that, I don't know how far we are, but we're gonna try. We're trying to get that information out of this computer program, even if we have to send it somewhere. We'll do that. It is good if we do it. But then, like Ed said, we should be getting new software. So. Anything else? But that one, Trustee Hinshaw kind of led into other issues that leads me to the, there's a few sheets there, it's kind of like an infrastructure information. Again, there, you'll see it says from 2 to 5 or 5 to 10 years. That really needs to be fine-tuned. That is another big picture. And how will some of those relate to a street repair? So there's more work than just saying, you know, we're gonna come up with this formula for street repair, now we have infrastructure to look at. Maybe if we fix this street, a lot of the water mains, I guess, it may be Ed could tell me, a lot of the water mains aren't underneath the roads, they're kind of off.
They're off on the right of way or
Off on the right of way.
side of the road,
So we
right?
might not be looking like if we repair certain streets and the water main goes, it's not gonna ruin the street because many of them are off to the right of way. But there may be some relationship on one street that we look at all this, where maybe it'd be a good idea to fix something underground before we do this particular street, maybe that gets pushed off. So these are all issues now, when we look at this infrastructure list, that we have to prioritize, go through it over again, and see where we fit, and again, cost, and then the discussion starts.
You know firsthand, because I lived there, a trail in East-West Street, the water main is not under the pavement, it's actually on the north side in the right-of-way, and the sewer line is on the south side in the right-of-way, so, you know, potentially redoing the street there, and I'm just giving this as an example, we wouldn't have to worry about paving over and then 2 years have to dig it up to fix a water main or sewer. They're actually offset away from the pavement curves, by the way, you know, that has curves as well.
Oh, okay, well, I know there are some, but that's when I say we would look at relationship to streets and curbs, just to see what, if there are some out there that,
Now, at some point, they all connect and they intersect,
Right.
they go under pavement somewhere sooner or
so
later.
this is all the work that we, I mean, it looks like 2 different plans, you know, streets, curbs, infrastructure, but it's really gonna be, it's gonna come out as 2 plans, but it's really one big. And now we may even add to that, I mean, there's tree issues, you know, we haven't put that together, I think Phil is working on that, you know, with tree disease, how many trees.
Right.
And that type of thing, but this is more of the priority issues, I think, right now is our infrastructure, our streets and our curbs. So this is information that's given out to the board to digest.
I know it's just a report.
Yeah, but, you know, sure.
Just to factor that in for future planning. Okay, first I'll recognize Trustee Hinshaw.
Thank you. Again, I think this is a great start. In looking at the water, it looked like there was one for water meters, 250 or 270,000. As I understand it, if we did that, there would be an offsetting reduction in expense from the old meter to the new meter. I don't know if that's true or not. I think we walk around and check the meters, and the new meters, they would be wireless or something.
I think there's all kinds of systems, right, Ed?
You can do wireless or radio read.
And I just bring it up so if there's any opportunity where we show the expense, which looks big, if it's offset by a reduction in, you know, labor or material, that would be great.
Yeah. And that would probably come out in our, when we start talking about the financial end of it, that would probably be a bigger
And I had one other question. There, it talks about a 500,000 gallon underground reservoir. Where is that located?
Ed, that's, you want to explain it?
Our water pumping station is right behind the building,
Right behind the building.
and our reservoir is right behind the pump station.
Is it a big tank?
It's a 500,000 gallon concrete underground storage tank.
Then my last question, much like the roads, is there a rating for water lines? Is there any way to, say?
Well, like Coach East, when you get one every 100 feet, I think that's pretty substantial.
A break.
100, right, a water main break, but is there a rating? I don't know of any rating, but I think good common sense would tell us that that's about time to be replaced, but
So maybe we could get the brakes.
the brakes, we've been charting the brakes for 30 years, so we have all that data on a chart, and
And for example, I think we could talk, where's our latest water main?
well, the latest leak right now is in Acacia and Sweetwood Court.
And how many feet was that?
Like 30 feet. There's 4 breaks in there right now and 2 leaking, and we're
looking
gonna,
at just repairing.
we're
So
taking the whole piece
taking
out.
The whole piece out, that would kind of answer, I think, Fincher, I think that would answer your question. So we look at this piece,
Yeah.
and it already has 5 breaks, and we're gonna repair 2 more next to it. So we're just, of course, it's not a $200,000 project either, you know, it's probably about $5,000 project.
Also, if I could just add on to what trustee Henshaw had stated was, going forward with respect to the streets, if and when we get to the point where we're able to do a number of the streets and we've determined the cost, then to the extent that we have money in the budgets for maintenance going forward, what we would have been budgeting, we could probably reduce that, because presumably we have new streets, it wouldn't require as much, so not basically new revenue, but a reduction in expense that would have that result, so just settling into it. Again, this was the very first and preliminary report, and I want to thank trustees Wittenberg and Bailey and Chief and Ed for your time you spent working on this. As trustee Wittenberg said, data collection, but it's moving forward, so I appreciate your efforts to this point. And let me entertain any questions or comments that you might have, and I don't know that we'll have answers, but if you just have something that you want to add that perhaps you'd like us to keep in mind as it goes forward, I'll give everybody the opportunity at this time. Mrs. Metz in the back, please.
Hi, just as you added to your street, our neighborhood has curbs as well.
I guess I kind of just misspoke, but the majority of the curbs are.
Just want to make sure we're in there.
Yeah, but as we look, and as I said, as we look at the streets, we'll look at relation, whatever street has curbs.
Yes.
I guess that's what I should have said.
Yeah.
Whatever street has curbs, we'll look at it together.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
And I think Ed, I think I know it's on your list
Yeah,
here.
when you do the road evaluation, you'll know that it's a rural cross-section with no
Right.
curb and gutter, or curb and gutter and storm sewer. So you'll note that on the software.
Great.
I thought I saw a hand over here first. Oh, if not, I'll recognize this gentleman. Could you say your name and give us your address, please?
My name's Scott Guerin. I'm at 11207 Sequoia Lane, Wolf and Sequoia on the corner. I just had a quick question on the street repair. When you guys do that evaluation, I heard him say about the cost of adding, whether it's 1.5 inch or 2 inch. Our street isn't maybe too bad, but as trucks pull in and out, whether it's UPS or lawn care or garbage trucks, we don't have curbs, so the edges get torn up. And I happen to be in a trade, and a little bit about asphalt, and if you guys did a repair of, say, 1.5 inch or 2 inch, it's kind of a waste of money, because that's going to keep breaking away, because you have nothing to stop that infrastructure from moving apart again. Would you do a proper repair and put it like a 3 or 4 inch base down to do a repair, or would that just be something that is cosmetically looks good to us in the community and just keep breaking apart again?
Well, I think we're gonna look at, we evaluate the streets, and as we go through the PACER program, we're certainly gonna, we're not gonna just repair for cosmetics. I mean, that would be just a waste of our time. I'm not saying your street's gonna get the amount that you asked, I don't know. Until we get close enough and we do the study and look at it, we do our PACER program to see where it falls, but we're certainly not gonna just say, oh, let's just go throughout the village and do a cosmetic fix, because it's not gonna do us, it's not fair to anybody, it's not fair to the board, it's not fair to the residents. Did I correct that?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think if you're on the corner pulling out on the Wolf Road, is that where you live?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Those,
that's-
we got
that-
chunks of asphalt that just been coming up over the past couple of
Yeah,
years.
where you were talking about, that's Cook County Highway Department, they actually have 100-foot right-of-way there.
Oh,
So
okay.
from the center line of that road, 50 feet, that's their responsibility.
Okay,
But,
so then the village wouldn't actually be attempting to do anything,
We
it's not your
would,
responsibility?
you know, when the county comes in and does some paving projects, we work with them, we try to identify